On this episode of Carnage, it's time to get 427 cubes of LS goodness into our 90s Commodore Ute. Right, well, this has been quite the process. We've been building this for a while, we've been trial fitting things, we've painted the engine bay last episode, tried different sumps, got the diff in there. So things are progressing, not as fast as I'd like, but they are progressing. So now we need to get that engine in the engine bay for reasons I'll explain in a minute. So got to get that manifold off, get the lift plate on there, move things around, but I need to know that this engine is going to fit because there are little differences. We already noticed that one of the engine mounts needed to be modified around these bosses on the block, so that's fine. It was just a little bit of grinding, but it had to happen, and I'm glad I found it now and not, you know, when we're 2 days to go or something like that. So let's make things happen. And manifold off, lift plate on, get the engine in there. Also have to do the rear cover while the engine's off the stand. So let's just make it happen. In my head I've got ZZ Top playing. It's just rolling around in my brain. Need to do something, otherwise I am going to go insane. Now that we've got the engine off the stand, it is time to put on the back cover. To help line that up, we do have a alignment tool there from ProFlow, so I'll show you how that works in a sec. You may notice we've got a bit of aluminium strap there. So with the stand on there, I couldn't get the cover on there, so I've put a piece of aluminium strap there just to stop the cam walking its way out the back of the block and possibly damaging, you know, bearings and stuff like that. So we're going to remove that, put in our block plugs, and then seal that up. I also have to check that it's got the little divider piece in there for the oil. There's a little barbell that goes in there. Let me check that. Well, it looks like they don't run one in these. That's fine. In a normal LS setup, they'll run what they call a barbell in the back oil passage to divide the two oil passages. Obviously, they don't run one in the dart block because that just stops right there at the first oil passage. That's good. One less thing to worry about, but if you're building an LS, it's very important that you put them in when you're building the engine, otherwise you're going to end up with no oil pressure. Anyway, all right, we don't need that. Let's put that plug back in. So now it's time to put our rear main cover on the back of the engine. Now, if you're doing this without a seal in place, you use this alignment tool from ProFlow. So that in that case you would put the cover on and then insert your alignment tool, which will go around the crank. There's O-rings inside and outside. You lube them up, slide it over the crank, make sure you can rotate it inside the cover, which will be loosely bolted to the back. And once that's in and that can rotate and it's all lined up, you can bolt it up and then put your seal in, and using that to actually knock your seal in place. This cover actually came with a seal and comes with a little plastic insert already in place, so that lines up around the crank, and we will slide that on. Obviously we've made sure our surfaces are all nice and clean. So now we need to get it in there. Job done. Of course, if you need front or rear seals for your LS engine, ProFlow have seals with a rubber O-rings already built into them, ready to go. So last episode we decided we were going to use this RTS fabricated sump. It's a great looking piece, it's going to work really well. What it didn't have was an oil outlet, but ProFlow have sent out this adapter, and it's usually made for their steel sump range. So we had to do some clearancing on the welds here, because these welds, on the outside it's basically tack welded, on the inside it is fully welded. So it doesn't matter that we've ground back a little bit of the weld there, a little bit there on the corner. It also didn't have these two holes in the adapter. So what I've done is I bolted it up, drilled and tapped those holes, they're just a 6mm thread, and then use these countersunk screws to hold our adapter in place, and basically it looks like it was made for it. So yeah, love it when parts work together. So what I'm going to do is bolt that in place. Now you probably say, Scotty, why don't you bolt it up permanently? Well, Scotty's been a little bit slack. Not really, I've been working my butt off, been so busy that I have not ordered the oil pump bolts yet. So I still need to order those. The front cover is on its way as well. So what I'll do is I'll bolt this up in place temporarily, and we'll get it in the car and make sure everything's going to fit. Let's hope this doesn't drop on here. All right. That looks like it'll work well. Hopefully it clears everything in the car, and we can just run some -10 lines off to a remote filter, maybe even an external oil cooler if we're feeling energetic. But anyway, let's get it in the car and see if it fits. Well, this engine actually hasn't been in the car yet, so this is going to be exciting. Okay, engine is in, car goes up, gearbox goes in. Okay. It's an in. Okay, so engine and box is in place. So now we've got to put a starter motor in there and then work out the position of the steering rack, because I have cut the mounts off. Here's our new mounts. So we need to get them in position so I can weld them in place. Let's talk about that. No doubt some people are going to be unhappy with this, but it is what it is. We had to relocate the rack, so there's only one way of doing that. So what I've done is I've drawn up in CAD some designs and then gone over to MPW and cut them out of 3mm steel. This is one of the ones that didn't work because I kind of screwed up the folds, made the folds too tight. So it had to be 35mm between there, and as you can see it's splayed. So I went and did it again, and now it's perfect. So anyway, I've made up the mounts. The mounts fit on the rack. I've cleaned off the K-frame. It's all ready to weld up. But now I need to get the starter motor in position so we know where that's at, and then get the rack in the right position, tack it in place, then we'll pull it all out, fully weld it, and all will be good with the weld. Yes, it will. Get our starter bolted up. Let's push the rack in position. Look at that. We have clearance. I can actually even come back a little bit. Let's not stuff it up. So now that those are very soundly tacked in place, gearbox out, engine out, and then we'll do a full weld on them, and then we should be good to go. Time for some welding. So is it the neatest welding I've ever done? No. But is it going to hold? Oh yeah. She's strong. So anyway, just tidy up a couple little bits and we'll give it a coat of paint. It'll be all good. So now our mounts are on, it's all done, all painted. Let's drop the engine and box back in and double check it all fits still. Car goes up, car goes down. Actually, before we drop the engine back in, I need to take that lug off because it is very close to the brake booster. In fact, it hits it most of the time. So let's lop it off, schmooze it off, and that way we don't have to deal with it anymore. Engine is in again. Engine and box are back in again. All right, that's in, job done. Clears the starter motor, engine and box fits. All right, I think that is a pretty good day's work. So we'll leave it at that for today. But tomorrow, we start all over again on the next problem. So yesterday was a pretty successful day. We sorted out that rack and pinion issue, but now we need to pull the motor out again so we can seal it up for the very last time. So, car goes up. Okay. All right, the rear's sealed up. Let's do the front. All right, we'll start by slipping off the sump. Okay, so we'll give that a clean out. But we'll start with our front covers and then the sump can go on last. To seal up the front of the motor, we've got to go oil pump, which goes kind of that way. So oil pump and pickup, and then we'll do the front cover. So we've got a ProFlow two-piece front cover here, which allows you to change the cam timing if you wish. So it's got a cam sensor there, and then it has this removable top piece. So if you wanted to, say, advance or retard the cam shaft while it's still in the engine, you can do that. So we just got to put a new seal in there because it has none. So we put a seal in there and then we can align it up and get it on the engine, but oil pump first. As I've mentioned on a previous video, you need to use this insert which goes around the crank snout, so that slides on, and then our oil pump is driven off that. Now, there's two machine surfaces. You've got that flat spot on your pump, that flat spot on the block. There is no seal in between. So what I'd like to do is just put some aviation gasket maker over that, just to provide a bit better of a seal than just two machine surfaces up against each other. And yeah, we'll do that and then we'll whack some bolts in there and lock her in. Messy, messy stuff. Come on, baby. Whoop, there we go. Okay, so we've got those wound in. Let me just go find the torque measurement. Beautiful. If there's one thing I really like about LS engines, it is the gaskets. They're all rubber O-ringed, so it makes it easy to seal things up. Nothing worse than leaks. Right there. So I just noticed something, and I think it's a dart block thing. Now we've noticed there's little changes on the dart block that don't correspond to factory blocks, and I think this gallery plug is one of them. The seal runs straight over the top of that, and some people may go, oh, there's something wrong with the seal. No, because if you put the seal on the cover, it lines up with the cover perfectly. So I think it's a dart block thing, and I think what we'll have to do is just run a little bit of Celastic across that plug just to make sure it seals perfectly. But yeah, just something to be wary of if you're building a similar setup, because yeah, the temptation would be to just whack the seal on there and then wonder why it constantly weeps out that side of the block. Gotta love custom race components. So we're going to put our front seal in the cover. Of course, we're going to use our seal driver kit from Hare & Forbes. What I'll do is I'll put a little bit of that aviation gasket stuff around the outside of the seal, press it into the cover, and yeah, it'll be job done. And then we can use the ProFlow alignment tool to line it up and make sure it's in the right position. Look at us go, using all the right tools and sealants and things. There we go. So behind this top cover there is a full O-ring gasket. I am making sure that all the screws are in tight. It will seal up. Now these bottom two go through the cover completely, so we'll have to make sure we seal up these two, just with that same sealant. But the others all go into blank holes, so not such a problem. But yeah, just make sure you seal up the bottom two. Of course I had to pull it apart just to make sure the seal was there. You got to check these things. Let's whack some goo in here. So I'll whack a few bolts in here first, and then we'll grab our alignment tool and set it up. So with the alignment tool, you just want to whack a little bit of oil on it. Come on, Mr. Oil Can. There we go. Alrighty. There we go. So that will center the cover. Now we can tighten up all our bolts and the cover will be perfectly centered on the seal. we can pop that out. That's a big ass bolt. I think it just needed a stronger battery. Ugh. All right, that is off. Now some of you are probably wondering why I'm reusing an old balancer. It's because it is a very expensive race balancer and it costs probably about 800 bucks. So yeah, I'm gonna reuse it. Let's ugger the duggers. So we have both uggered and duggered the balancer on. How many foot-pounds? All of them. But we haven't talked about offsets. All right, so let's talk about it from the Australian perspective. Over in the States, it's a little bit different. They go off like Camaro, Corvette, and truck. We don't have truck engines here, well, not from the factory anyway, so we don't really talk about them at all. What we do have is the VT to VZ range, and then the VE/VF range. All right, so VE/VF is basically like Corvette in that they bring all accessories in close to the engine. So if you want to have the minimal amount of distance out from the engine, you go with the Corvette / VE/VF setup, all right? And that's what we're running. Earlier engines like VT to VZ, they're a little bit further out, so they move all the accessories out. Trucks, well, trucks have got heaps of room, so they're all way out. And so you don't pretty much want to use them in car setups unless you have to. So we've gone with the VE/VF setup, and that's why I'm talking about that is because when you buy your accessories, so you've got your balancer, so buy your balancer first, choose that, and all your other accessories that you have to buy, if you have to buy them, you will base off that. So our water pump, we've decided to go to a mechanical water pump now. There's a couple of different reasons for that. One was belt routing and stuff like that. Other is power. We have so much stuff on this car that has to use electricity that I looked at it. I've made a bit of a mud map talking about how many things draw power in this car, and having an electric water pump on there wasn't doing us any favor. Remember, we've got 3 Hellcat pumps which can draw up to 25 amps each, plus the factory pump in the tank, plus the coils which can draw up to 15 amps each. Of course, you're not powering all the coils all the time, but you can be powering up to 2 coils at a time. So, you know, with all the amperage we're drawing, plus thermofan, the fan on the transcooler, the scavenge pump fan pump as well for the oil and the turbos, plus your headlights, radio if you're going to run one of those. I don't think we're going to have the power to run a radio. Plus we have to run the dash, the IC7 dash, plus we have to run the Nexus. The Nexus needs a minimum amount of voltage to run as well. So all these things use power. So by going to a electric water pump, going from an electric water pump back to a mechanical is going to save us a bunch of power. And it also means we can run a normal power steering setup rather than an electric power steer, which is what we're looking to have to do. And if we're going to run an electric power steer, well, those things draw a heap of amps. So it was really going to put a crimp in the power production of the engine. I mean, because when you start drawing energy away from the coils, the injectors, which I didn't mention before as well, so the injectors, the coils, the fuel pumps, when you start drawing power away from those things, your horsepower suffers and you can kill your engine. So let's try and not do that. So we're going to mechanical water pump. Of course, it's going to be a ProFlow unit. They've already sent it across. We'll put that on in a sec. And we're going to go with manual, well, power steering pump that runs off the crank as well. So saving us electricity. Electricity costs a lot these days. We need to use less of it. So we've got our ProFlow water pump gaskets, we've got our ProFlow water pump there as well, all in black. And then we've got some ARP bolts to hold it all on. So these gaskets can be a little bit difficult at times, but if you're smart about it, not too bad. Because you're dealing with two individual gaskets, best to do one side first, get that one lined up, and then get your other one in there, slot the gasket in, and then just, yep, get into the hole, and then you can tighten them up. Okay, so that's done. Time for pickup and the sump, but I have to clean the sump out. That's going to take a while, and I have to get the right bolt for the pickup. I think I have it laying around here somewhere, but there's the pickup. Goes up underneath, slotting into the pump, something like that. And then obviously sump goes on as well, but sump's going to take some time to clean, and time is something we don't have for this episode. So you're going to see the sump and the engine go back into the car on a future episode of Carnage.